So, first off, I wish to welcome everyone who is here with us today to listen to RI General Secretary John Hewko, especially our own District Governor, Rotarian Karnagaran, and the trustee nominee, PDG Aziz Menon, in addition to the other governors from the other districts as well. I also wish to welcome past governors, presidents, and past presidents who have taken the time to be with us today. I apologize for not being able to recognize everyone individually due to the time constraint. This is the last of a series of 4 meetings the Rotary Club of Colombo has organized with the Rotary International Leadership, and we do not plan for this to be the last. We definitely will continue these meetings. Quite a number of the attendants today have joined us for all the other 3 meetings as well. I wish to thank you for continuing to be with us. Our sister and associate clubs in India, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Bahrain, and Pakistan are also here with us today. I apologize if I missed anyone. We normally do not get a chance to meet and interact with our sister clubs, but this year has been different. I guess this is the silver lining about the coronavirus. So without further delay, we will continue with the rest of the program. A couple of requests before we continue from the participants. Please mute yourselves and unmute yourselves only when you're speaking. It is difficult for the program organizers to be controlling individual speakers at a large gathering like this. Also, turn off your video if you're not speaking. This is in case people are running short on data, as this is the end of the month. So to continue, agenda for today is very straightforward. I will introduce the speaker, followed by our General Secretary John Hewko's speech for about 20 minutes. Will be followed by a question and answer session. Rotarian Asmat Iqbal will assist me with this. Finally, the vote of thanks will be given by Ravi, the past Rotary International President Ravi. And stick around for a little bit after that, after the meeting is closed, for a little fellowship. We can try to introduce each other and go from there. Today's speaker, everybody knows him, but let me profusely thank General Secretary Hewko for joining us today. I'm aware that it is now past midnight in Evanston. I am not sure if he's in Evanston or someplace else, and it was so good of you to accept our invitation. You have been to our club before for the launch of our cancer project a few years ago. It's good to have you here again, although under different circumstances. You'll be happy to know that we are expecting about 200 people to join today from more than 5 different countries, apart from a large contingent of Sri Lankans. Sorry about that. I think my computer has frozen. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay. So thank you, John. And Ravi has told me that one of the best committees he was involved in at Rotary was the RI search committee for the new CEO. And there were a number of candidates who stood out, but John Hewko's resume stood out more than the others, and it has been great to involve him as the CEO. Without further ado, I would like to introduce General Secretary John Hewko to continue his speech. Over to you, John.
Well, thank you very much, President Sarab, and thank you for the kind invitation to address the Rotary Club of Colombo. Here is from our my vacation home in Park City, Utah, in the mountains. The view from our balcony in the living room. So, given that we've had terrible weather here in Chicago, rainy, cold, I thought I'd cheer myself up by reminding myself of some of the beautiful views in the wintertime in Park City. But thank you very much for having me. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted that we were able to have participants from so many countries. I was just looking at the chat. We've from Singapore, Australia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, India, Bahrain, and I'm sure I've missed a few other countries as well. But thank you all very much for joining us this evening. And first of all, let me just wish all of you the very best, you and your families, and the Rotarians in your respective countries, in your respective districts and your countries, all the best in this extraordinarily difficult time. And it's a moment that happens once in a century. And one of the things I'm very proud of as I sort of tour the Rotary world virtually, and as many of you do as well, is how quickly Rotarians have adapted to the new situation, how we have continued with our passion, our work, our projects, our quest to make the world a better place. And so thank you very much. And again, thank you to the Rotary Club of Colombo. As President Saraf mentioned, I had the pleasure of attending one of your meetings about, I think it was 5-6 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Ravi, and also had a chance to spend some time with Ravi and Vandati at their tea plantation. And it was a phenomenal visit, and it's a fantastic club, particularly the work that you do with cervical cancer. We were there for an event you had with the Rotary Club of Birmingham, and my wife Marga is a member of Chicago One, and as I was just coming up here to meet with you, she indicated that the Rotary Club of Chicago is very proud of the fact that they're working very closely with you on your cervical cancer project. What I thought I would do is perhaps give you a global perspective, at least my perspective from a sort of 30,000 foot level of where the organization stands today, highlight a couple of things that have occurred that I'm sure that are on people's minds, and then where I think we might be going in light of this new normal, this new reality that we are facing. As Saurabh mentioned, I have the privilege and honor of being the General Secretary of Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. I'm now in my 9th year as your General Secretary, and it's really been an extraordinary experience for me and for my wife Marga. And as your General Secretary, my primary responsibility is to oversee the professional staff of Rotary and to keep the sort of the machinery of Rotary running worldwide. And so back in January, early January, it became very obvious to me that what was happening in China and a few other countries in Asia was just the tip of the iceberg. And this wave of this terrible virus was going to spread and you know, as throughout the world. So already in January, we put together a Corona task force, COVID task force, to really be prepared in the event that you know, we would need to move the organization to a work from home status. It was pretty clear to me even back in January that you know, with these lockdowns that are happening in China and other places, it was going to be happening elsewhere, and it was inevitable. So we took the month of January and February to prepare, to get ready. In early March, I sent the entire Secretariat home for a day to see how we could operate virtually and to sort of find out the glitches and sort of get the kinks out of the system. I'm glad we did, because, you know, obviously we discovered a number of things. And then on March 12th, the entire Secretariat went to full work at home status. And one of the things I'm most proud of in my 9 years as your General Secretary is that we were able to seamlessly, without really missing a beat, transition from working out of offices to working virtually. And similarly for Rotary worldwide, Rotary clubs, districts, etc., you have been extraordinarily successful in adapting quickly and moving to this virtual reality. We currently have 8 of our Secretariat colleagues who have tested positive for the coronavirus, but all of them contracted the virus well after the 2-week period after we went to work at home status. I'm very proud of the fact that we did everything we could to maximize the health and safety of our Rotarians, and particularly of the 750 employees for whom I have responsibility. So from an operational perspective, Rotary is in excellent shape. The Secretariat is fully busy. We continue to support Rotarians. In fact, in many areas, supporting Rotarians more than before, because we need to adapt all of our business processes now to working from a working in a virtual context. And so we have to rethink our training materials, the way we organize ourselves, and the way we operate. But from my perspective, operationally, as Rotarians, you can be very confident that our international organization is functioning fully and fully supporting our Rotarians as we have in the past. And here I really want to commend our offices in Parramatta and in Delhi. I think they've done an outstanding job in continuing to support the Rotarians in your region. Now, one of the questions that very often comes up is, what will be the effect on membership in Rotary given this terrible pandemic? And I'm personally one that likes to manage and operate based on data, not on anecdote, not on intuition, not on emotion. So I asked our Chief Strategy Officer to undertake a sophisticated statistical analysis, looking back 115 years, and we do have in Rotary a PhD statistician on staff, to do a sophisticated modeling of what could we anticipate in terms of the effect on membership due to this terrible pandemic. And what we found was that there was 1 year, the second year, 2 years after the depression of the 30s ended, Rotary saw a 5% drop in membership. And that only happened once in Rotary's history, a drop of that size. In all of the other challenges that we faced worldwide, again, and there may be differences among regions and differences among districts, but worldwide, in all of the other major pandemics, world wars, etc., we would see membership drops of 1%, 1.5%. During the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, we saw membership drop of 0.5% in each of the 2 years of the Great Recession. And so, as we look out over the, I've just lost my screen here. Can everyone still continue to see me?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
okay.
now we can.
It's come back. Thank you. Something happened. And so in terms of where we're predicting membership, we're predicting that even in the worst year ever, we lost a 5% drop in membership, which represents a $4 million loss of revenues to Rotary International. We have very strong reserves. We'll have significant cost savings that we're looking at due to the curtailment of a lot of the travel and physical events that we have. And so certainly in the short to medium term, the financial situation of Rotary, in my mind, based on the numbers and based on historical data and the modeling we've done, is very, very strong. Where we do anticipate seeing a decline is in giving. That the historical trends have been that while membership has tended to stay relatively flat during these crises, giving does decrease. And so that's a challenge we're going to have to face, and we're going to have to be very creative in terms of ensuring that we continue to raise money for our great causes and to ensure that our organization can continue to make the impact and have the impact that it's having in the world. So I'd like to, again, reassure you that from a global perspective, we are organizationally very sound and on financially very sound footing. Now, what has been our sort of global response to this COVID pandemic? And as many of you are aware, the trustees of the Rotary Foundation created a COVID disaster fund. It was initially funded with $1 million and then with an additional $2 million. So there's $3 million that was allocated by the trustees. Each district in the world had the opportunity to apply for a expedited grant of up to $25,000. Unfortunately, that $3 million has been already dispersed. We did receive another $1 million from DDF contributions from districts, direct online contributions. And in addition, as you're aware, the convention was canceled, the Honolulu Convention, and full refunds were given to all people who had signed up, all Rotarians had signed up. But the people were given the option of directing their refunds to the COVID disaster response fund, and we received over $200,000 from Rotarians in that way. So we've dispersed through the disaster response fund about $4 million now in COVID funds. 288 districts have applied, 163 have received grants, and another 125 are in the queue as we replenish the fund to receive those grants. We've also had significant uptick in global grant activity that's COVID related. About $8.5 million worth of COVID-related global grant applications have been received, and that includes a small number of global grants that were approved but have now been repositioned to deal with the COVID situation. Polio, and I saw that Aziz Memon is on with us, and if there are further more detailed questions, I'm sure Aziz can provide the latest. But as you're aware, in a nutshell, the GPI has determined to pause for now, the door-to-door vaccination campaigns, obviously in this era of social distancing. However, the surveillance work and all of the other work related to the polio effort continues, and particularly a lot of the polio infrastructure is being repurposed to help with the COVID situation. If you recall, several years ago, when the Ebola outbreak happened in West Africa, the emergency operations centers in that region, particularly Nigeria, were very helpful when they were repurposed to help stop the spread of Ebola in Nigeria. But the global message to Rotarians is we need to continue to focus on the polio effort. We need to continue to fundraise for the polio effort. We do have an agreement with the Gates Foundation where if we raise and spend $50 million in a calendar year, that will be matched 2 to 1. That agreement remains in place. I know there was some concern based on some reporting of some comments that Bill Gates was purported to have said about just focusing on COVID. That is not the case. Gates Foundation remains strongly in support of the polio eradication effort, and our 2 to 1 agreement with the Gates Foundation continues in place. A lot of questions about dues, and is Rotary going to be suspending or eliminating dues? And the current position is no. The $64 $68 Rotary International annual dues, $34 per semi-annual dues will continue in effect. However, if particular clubs have facing severe difficulties, we certainly on a case-by-case basis, working through your governors, are prepared to perhaps delay the payment of the invoices. And we're going to be very flexible in terms of club terminations, et cetera. We generally are flexible to start with, but in particular, given this crisis, we will be happy to work with those clubs that are facing difficulty. We've received very, very few, less than 1% of the Rotary clubs in the world have indicated they have an issue with the dues. So it's not been a widespread problem. Let me just close by making 2 points. I think it may have been President Sarab mentioned at the beginning that there is, in every crisis, very often there is a silver lining. And, necessity is often the mother of innovation and invention. And as terrible as this pandemic is, and as difficult as it is for the world, for our economies, obviously we've suffered thousands of deaths, it's terrible. But for Rotary as an organization, I believe that this is an opportunity. I think it's very opportune that we have the themes, this year's and next year's themes are very apropos for what's happening. Rotary connects the world. And I have seen just an explosion of connection using the internet and online tools. We now have 122 people participating in this call, and the cost is $0, and the convenience is 100. I mean, it's in the comfort of your home. And I'm hearing both anecdotally and we're seeing statistically that clubs are more energized than ever, many of them. The meeting attendance has skyrocketed. Many clubs that meet physically 4 times a month are now saying maybe we just have 3 physical meetings and 1 online meeting, since we seem to be getting much better attendance. And so I think in every difficult situation there is a silver lining. Our membership has been flat at 1.2 million for 25 years. And it's only been flat thanks to the growth in your region, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Korea, and the membership issues in terms of decline have been North America, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. And so the declines in those countries have been offset by the gains in your region, and that's maintained our membership at 1.2 million. But starting in 2016 with the Council on Legislation and the adoption of enactments that were really encouraging innovation, flexibility, in those regions of the world where membership was an issue, where people weren't finding our product, meaning our traditional club model, attractive. Clubs now have the extreme flexibility, a lot of flexibility in fashioning a club experience that is perhaps more appealing to the marketplace that they are trying to reach. And again, I realize this is not an issue in most of the world represented by the participants in this call, but it is an issue in other parts of the world. And so where it is an issue, there's now an opportunity to take this flexibility, which the 2016 Council sort of opened the door for, and the necessity of this crisis now is really forcing us to think differently, think out of the box, come up with new ways of operating. And I think perhaps in some parts of the world, this may result in a membership increase. Particularly the younger generation, the younger demographic that in many parts of the world, we've really struggled to attract. There, perhaps we'll find Rotary more attractive as we move into more of a virtual way of doing business, because they're used to that, and that's what they expect, and don't find that strange or different. So I'm seeing a change in our culture. Obviously, I'm seeing a change in the way in which we operate, and I think we've connected like never before. So connecting, Rotary Connects the world is a great theme, and then next year's theme, Rotary Opens Opportunities, is even more apropos. This is an opportunity for Rotary to take itself to an even higher level. The world needs Rotary more than ever now. In some ways, this is our historical moment. Rotary was built for moments such as this. We are 1.2 million community leaders with deep roots in almost every community around the world. I like to very often say there's not one politician in the world that doesn't have a Rotarian as a constituent. And this is our moment to make a difference, whether it's the COVID pandemic, whether it's advocating for our causes, whether it's working with our clubs, districts to make our communities, our regions, our countries a better place in light of this tragic pandemic. There's no nonprofit, or very few nonprofits in the world, that are as ideally positioned as Rotary to make a difference. So this really is our moment. And I'm very confident that all of us are going to step up, as we have been doing over the last 2 months, and continue to take our organization on a great trajectory. Now, let me just close with sort of 5 calls to action to the Rotary world. And some of these may or may not be relevant to your part of the world, but I do think from a global perspective, I think they are. The first is that as we looked at what happens to membership historically, we also took a look at when do members tend to leave Rotary. And what the data shows, looking back, is that to the extent we lose Rotarians, we tend to lose them between the 2nd and 3rd year of their membership. Last year we had 150,000 people join Rotary. We had 150,000 people leave Rotary. So in some ways, our membership issue, to the extent parts of the world have a membership issue, it's in some ways more a retention issue than a recruitment issue. And so we see that it's the members that have only been members for 2 to 3 years, they tend to leave. And the longer one stays in Rotary, the probability of leaving Rotary declines dramatically. So as we confront this crisis, and as an organization, we try to deal with this, try to minimize the loss in membership. It's important that clubs focus on the most vulnerable members. And those tend to be those who are newest to Rotary. So as we focus on so call to action 1, let's focus on retaining our members, keeping our clubs engaged, vibrant, doing things, but be aware that at least statistically on a global level, it tends to be the more Rotarians with lower tenure that tend to be those that leave the organization faster. Secondly, we do have a challenge of how do we now carry out our projects in this virtual environment. So much of the work that we do is hands-on, being out with the people, doing the great work that we do. And I think this is going to take the creativity of all of our members to adapt to this new reality and to continue to do the great service projects we do in a way that's now adapted to this new normal, certainly over the next 4 or 5 months that the world will be facing. So that's the second call to action. Let's put on our creative thinking caps and really think through how we can continue to deliver the great projects we do while operating in this new normal. The third call to action has to do with fundraising, and it's very similar to the issue I just talked about in terms of local doing our projects. Most of our fundraising activities, at least in most parts of the world, are dependent on physical meetings. $1 million dinner, or million yen dinner, 20 million rupee dinners. I mean, the various pancake days, walkathons, bike rides, which I've been very passionate about in terms of raising money for polio. All of them, or most of them, depend on physical contact, being out and about, and organizing events. So how do we continue to raise money? And we need to continue to raise money for polio and for all the other great causes that we're involved in this new reality. And so my challenge to the Rotary world, and I think our challenge to ourselves, is how do we come up with these creative, innovative fundraising techniques? How do we discover the next ice bucket challenge? I don't know if you recall several years ago, ALS, terrible disease, this ice bucket challenge. I think they raised $300 million in that, and the cost to them was zero. I mean, it cost them absolutely nothing. It was an idea that went viral, and it was extraordinarily successful. So what is Rotary's next ice bucket challenge? And I'm very confident that with 1.2 million Rotarians putting again on their thinking caps, we will come up with extraordinary ways of doing it. I was just on a call over the weekend with the Ukrainian district. We had 300 Rotarians from Ukraine on the line, and we were talking about fundraising. And one of the clubs there was raising money. It did a very successful fundraiser, doing a virtual beer fest. And there were people were buying and bidding on virtual beers. I think at the end of the day, somebody got a real case of beer delivered to their house. Again, this is something that was very successful in Ukraine. It may or may not work in other parts of the world, but I think this is the kind of creativity that we need to unleash in terms of fundraising. The fourth is clubs that, we hear a lot about clubs whose growth, whose activity has even increased, clubs that are meeting, aggressively and passionately in this virtual environment. But we suspect that there are also clubs that may not be meeting and have not yet gotten into the swing of things. We need to work with our fellow clubs who may be languishing, get them into this virtual space, because if clubs aren't meeting for 3-4 months, the probability of their membership decline grows exponentially. And so I would urge you, if your own club is not meeting, to turn that around. And if some of your fellow clubs in your district or in your town are struggling with this new virtual environment, work with them to get them back up to speed, to get them operating and connecting in this virtual environment. And then finally, my last point is this is a great moment in Rotary history in a way. This is a tragic time, but I think it's also a time where incredible opportunities will open. The sky is not falling. We are operationally sound. We are financially sound. And in spite of this terrible tragedy that we're living in, I think as an organization, we're ideally poised to continue to make a difference, to continue to make even more of a difference. As I said, this is our moment. And I'm very confident that each and every one of us will step up and ensure that Rotary fulfills its destiny in a way in this difficult time that the whole world is facing. So President Saraf, thank you again for allowing me to share some thoughts with you, and I'm certainly happy to hear your feedback and your comments and your suggestions or any questions that you might have from snowy, fake Park City, Utah.